I felt like I was in a glass box screaming to be heard almost. For as long as I can remember, I have a very kind of complex mind, and that see things in a different way. And I suppose I always felt lonely. And I think as I grew up, I was trying to find my way, and trying to find a way of being able to express myself, I suppose, or be heard. And ironically, as I've matured and got wiser, I think the less I need to be heard, and the more I just feel the wonder around me, I tend to appreciate that I don't know the story ahead, and it's more beautiful than if I could ever design it myself. And I think in those moments I would just say, you know what, just sit here and appreciate and enjoy the ride, because if you're trying to push life or design life or do something, you're not going to create anything as magical as kind of sitting back and riding with it and appreciating it.
Welcome to the Gratitude Podcast on www.georgianbenta.com, where you'll hear a new story each week that will inspire more gratitude in your own life. Our mission is to inspire 100,000 people to discover how to feel gratitude and live a happy life through the amazing life stories of our successful guests and their actionable tips. And now, the host of our podcast, Georgian Benta.
Hi, Gratitude Seeker. Welcome to a new episode of the Gratitude Podcast. Today with me, I have Marc Winn, the co-founder of the Dandelion Foundation, that is on a mission to inspire the small self-governing nation of Guernsey to become the best place to live on Earth by 2020. I think this is an incredible mission to have, and we did talk a little bit, me and Marc, and what I love about his vision is that he wants to do something on a small scale that can be implemented on a wider scale afterwards. And Guernsey is actually, I think, one of the the smallest nations in the world, and he can do miracles there. And those things can influence the world itself, and it can be a place of inspiration for other people. And of course, gratitude is an important part of his vision. So I'm really happy to have him here with us and to let us know more about himself and about his story. Marc, welcome to the Gratitude Podcast.
Hi there. Hello, everyone.
So first, tell us a little bit about how the foundation got started and how you got the vision for something so amazing.
I mean, it's a long story. It goes back into the history of my entire existence, but essentially, I grew up in a family environment where the kind of two stories about make a lot of money, get a good education were challenged. So I grew up questioning the world around me quite early. And then, I built a business in my 20s and made a fair amount of money and was successful, but I didn't feel successful, and I had a couple of nervous breakdowns. So I really started to question after that process everything. And, I started mentoring and coaching entrepreneurs in 2008. And I became really kind of addicted to that process of helping other people rather than actually kind of building a business. And then I ended up in a place called Singularity University in 2013, which is the University of Changing the World with Technology. And I saw that two things. One, that people were building organizations to solve world problems where the founders were likely to struggle because they weren't building things for them. They were building things for other people's way of doing things, and also that they talked about government as an unsolvable problem. And I'm from this small island of 63,000 people, where problems exist, we're able to get together and change policy and legislation if we want to, much faster than anywhere else. And so, I'd always had this idea or in 2011, I remember looking back at my email, having this idea and talking to people about seeding a kind of Apollo program of community into society, and creating a vision for society that helps people come together in unity and try and do something. I mentioned this to many people, and then there's my co-founder now. We first time we'd had a proper conversation. We were sat outside a cafe and saying, the island was sunny and beautiful, and everybody was walking past away with the fairies in their own world, going back and forth to work, and they weren't really sitting appreciating what an amazing place we had. And we decided that day to launch the first conference the following year in 2014, and to see if without permission we could seed this meme into society about making Guernsey the best place to live on earth. Because we already felt that it was, and for us, and see if we could get people to step into the appreciation of where we live, and in stepping into that appreciation, get away from the negativity and all of the negativity that prevents progress, and the simple act of believing in a better world or appreciating the world we have is a way of getting government and community to transform. So that was 4 years ago. We've brought over 200 speakers to our community. I've had thousands of coffees, and we see change makers. And you mentioned about me trying to change the community. It's really got nothing to do with me. It's got everything to do with everybody that lives here, and nowhere can change unless everyone wants to do something different or wants to love what they live. And so we're really a background drumbeat for the possibility of everybody that already exists. And what we've seen is amazing stories of people stepping forward, a kind of growing up of community in many ways, where we're seeing people being unafraid to express how amazing this place is. And we're seeing, things like education transform, healthcare transform, government itself transform, and so many more community leaders taking ownership and a stake of where they live. And so that is the kind of shortest way I would describe the history, but hopefully that gives you a picture.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's such an amazing perspective. And what I also wanted to add in the beginning, but I somehow forgot, was the story of how we met, actually. So even you don't know the whole story, because we have at least a few listeners from Guernsey, and one that is particularly enthusiastic about the podcast, that at one point reached out to the local BBC radio, and she actually told them that they would like to hear me on the radio there as well. And they told them about the podcast, and we had a few chats. And afterwards, on the interview itself, the amazing host of Radio Guernsey actually talked about your project and what you're doing, and that we should get in touch. And we did. And it was interesting that at the precise moment, you tell the story about that, actually. How was it for you from your side?
Yeah, I think I was just driving in my community, and I just switched the radio on when I was driving in between two places, and I literally only listened to the radio for 5 minutes that day or 10 minutes that day. And the exact moment that I switched that radio on, you were speaking to Jenny, and you were having that conversation about having a chat with us and what we do. And it was just really spooky that the only time I was listening on that day, I always have listened for longer on other days. I'm a big fan of her show, yeah, no, it was just that amazing synchronicity, amazing moment in time, which, you know, those sort of things actually happen quite frequently to me, and so I tend to know when I get a signal like that that it's time to have a conversation and for something to happen. So it was just one of those moments.
Exactly. And we had a chat, a virtual coffee, and we are going to do some interesting things together, and I'm really happy about that. But firstly, let's get a little bit back to your story, actually, to how it was for you when you were successful but unfulfilled. Like, I see this theme quite a lot. Like, there are many people that seem to be very successful, like their business is going great, or they seem very successful from the outside, but inside they're struggling. And for me, at least, gratitude has been always very, very helpful in appreciating the journey itself, but also um, being happy with where I am in the moment.
Yeah, I certainly, you know, you know, I kind of always describe it as I felt like I was in a glass box screaming to be heard almost. You know, for as long as I can remember, I have a very kind of complex mind, and that see things in a different way. And I suppose I always felt lonely. And I think as I grew up, I was trying to find my way, and trying to find a way of being able to express myself, I suppose, or be heard. And ironically, you know, as I've matured and got wiser, I think the less I need to be heard, and the more I just feel the wonder around me, the more people have listened, and the more I've just stepped into who I am and the way I do things, for all the good and bad. And then, you know, gratitude in those moments of kind of struggle or anything now, it's like I tend to appreciate that I don't know the story ahead, and it's more beautiful than if I could ever design it myself. And I think in those moments I would just say, you know what, just sit here and appreciate and enjoy the ride, because if you're trying to push life or design life or do something, you're not going to create anything as magical as just kind of sitting back and riding with it and appreciating it. And you know, I'm human, so there are times where I forget that, but I find that kind of looking at the world with curiosity and wonder and appreciation is the way to get me back to myself. And hopefully I get better at cultivating that over time, because it's nice when I do.
I love that perspective. Instead of worrying about the future, having a feeling of wonder and of curiosity of what it brings. I think that is, and that can be very powerful, especially since so many people are suffering from anxiety. It's usually when people think about the future and they do so in a negative way. For instance, if we look at the news and I don't know, almost always something bad happens because this is how the news work. And when you think about the future, it's not something to look forward to with gratitude or with wonder or with curiosity. And I think this can be really powerful. How do you manage to do that in spite of all of the negatives?
Well, I mean, because I work on the small that will one day expand to give. You know, I get to see people every day that are making change and making transformation, and I trust, and I see some amazing changes and transformation, and I just think of all of the people in the world that must be going through the same thing and doing the same thing. And I know there's a lag time, and I know how almost the noise of negativity wakes people up and drives people and to do good things. And so, you know, I see that I have just a great overwhelming belief in people and the human race, despite the illusion almost of all the noise and negativity that's going on. I just really think we'll work it out, and this is part of the story. I'm kind of quite utopian in that way, and but as I say to my dystopian friends, I say, well, look, if the world does end, I'd have had a great day every day up till then. I don't get what the downside of having faith is, because there's nothing I can do about it other than enjoy what I have and try to do the best I can where I live. And I feel that doing that can contribute my kind of 1/7.5 billionth of the problem. And I think the more of us that take responsibility for how we are in the world, that we can scale that out. And in some ways, there's nothing to do other than to improve yourself and live with your family in the best way you can, and serve your community the best way you can. And I think in that the world will transform if more and more people do that.
Exactly. And I think, like, I totally believe in your perspective on faith, and it's so important and so powerful. And I was thinking about all of the things that have happened in our history, like all of the wars. Like, for instance, we're living in the most peaceful era ever. And another thing that got to that I was thinking about was the fact that just a few tens of years after the World War, Europe, for instance, was almost entirely rebuilt. And when I went to Vienna, for instance, you didn't even feel that there was a war there. Like, they rebuilt everything, and they did it, from my point of view, in a really beautiful way. Like, they integrated art with it, and they did high quality work. They built amazing things in spite of all of the bad things that have happened, in spite of all of the buildings that were destroyed by the war, by the bombings and everything. And we, as a human race, we've been through so many things, and we somehow managed to survive and to thrive, actually, because we're actually, as a number, we're getting bigger and bigger. And that's in spite of all of the problems that we see today. And I think that this can make us think, and it can get us to appreciate a little bit where we are in the world right now. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, renewal, I suppose, would be the word I'm hearing from you. And I think, individually, we have this capacity to renew ourselves after struggle, and communities. I mean, this community was occupied during the war. There's a film that's been releasing at the moment called Guernsey and the Literary Potato Peel Society that was inspired by it. And the people here had a really tough time, no food. They were cut off for years, and this community, whatever's happened to it, has bounced back, and whenever it's had tough times, it's reimagined itself. And I'm the same with me. Whenever I've had tough times, it's always been the precursor to something more beautiful. And the world will, and I think about this beyond the human race. I mean, ultimately, this planet will renew itself with or without us. Whether we're here in a few centuries really depends on our capacity to. The Earth will certainly be here, and life will be rich. But it's whether we've destroyed ourselves in the meantime that matters, and that's it. People worry about the planet. I don't worry about the planet at all. the planet will shrug us off if we don't learn to appreciate it. So. And it will renew, and life will come back, and richness will come back in a new way, as it has done with every meteor, with every thing. It comes back more than before, and our choice really is: do we go the way of the dinosaurs, or do we learn to live in harmony and evolve as one? Because the world's going to be just fine without us.
That's quite an interesting perspective. It's a bit dark from my point of view, but the bright side of it is that when we think about the fact that we can renew ourselves as well, I think, for instance, for our listeners that are feeling down right now, and they might feel that everything is bad in their life, or that there is no hope, they can actually think about the wars and the fact that we as a race, we have been through so many things, and we somehow managed to rebuild, and most of the times we managed to rebuild better and to be stronger thanks to those experiences. And I think this is like a real life example, and it's not something emotional or something that you can't see, but it's actually something physical that we can see. And I think that's really powerful, and hopefully it's inspiring for our listeners to meditate on that.
Yeah, hope is such a strong word, and it's kind of, it's an internal word. I think we're able to manufacture. I was always inspired by that film, The Shawshank Redemption, that kind of modeled that word hope, and how people in the darkest of circumstances, there are some people that can always have it, and so we must. It's possible to find hope within, and hope, as of seeding that bold goal in community. What we're really doing is tapping into the hopes and dreams of a collective community, and using that to kind of ride the wave of possibility. It's definitely it's within us all, and I think those moments of gratitude, as you're saying, those moments of meditation, those quiet moments, we're able to, once we can quiet the fear, the mind, the seeing everything that's bad in the world, and get into the silence and into the stillness, then hope arrives, and warmth arrives, and magic arrives. And you only have to look at a bumblebee on a flower, or a tree blowing in the wind, to realize that there's still magic here.
That's amazing. By the way, who are the people in your life that have influenced you in a way that makes you feel really grateful that you have met them, and that they had that powerful influence on you?
So, I mean, I've met so many people. If I'm honest, who are the greatest influences on my father? He taught me that he left school at 14 from a poor background, and he taught me, I suppose, in the belief of you can just make things happen. And I learn from everyone I meet, and my wife, who we've been together 20 years and has such heart and drive and all of these kind of things. My brother, who I built a business with, again, such drive and determination. And then through inviting amazing people from all over the world here, they all inspire me, and I get to spend time with some of the people doing the most incredible things. And then I see leaders emerge in my own community, and I spend time with them, and I'm just so inspired by the human potential of people that take steps. But I think in relevance to this podcast, I think I was very much on the big and the grand, and people like John Sweeney from Suspended Coffees, which is a kindness movement, and which showed me this power of small actions to change the world. And people like Nipun Mehta, who has Service Space again, which is a generosity incubator, again showing the power of small actions to change the world. These are the kind of people that shook my belief in it shook my thing is you need to create something big all the time. And I do work on something like that, but understanding that you build big things from small actions, I think is the thing that and the people that embody that live it, kind of eat, sleep, and breathe it. They're the guys that I'm kind of in awe in their presence.
Wow, that's amazing, and it's so true, because everything that's big, whether that's good or bad, it is built out of small things, and that's how it gets big. So we're nearing the end of our time together, and I wanted to ask you, how can our audience find you? How can our audience support you?
So to find me, I have a website that kind of links to everything that's going on in my world. That's marcwinn.com, and Marc is M-A-R-C, Winn is W-I-N-N. That links to the Dandelion Foundation. That links to my blog that I've kind of written. I also have a podcast that I've kind of shared conversations with some of the change makers. That's all linked from that website. I mean, if you want to go directly to the Dandelion Foundation, then it's dandelion.gg. GG is Guernsey's domain name. What are the challenges that we're facing or I'm facing in a project is, making this work financially. One of the challenges of building from small actions is that the best way to make change happen in a community is to not want credit, and so we empower others, and we try to build in a way that we don't really exist in some ways, so that we create the space for what already exists to emerge and challenge. And we've not yet really found the people that understand how to how to financially support that type of approach to creating a whole system transformation. People want kind of measurement and projects and defined outcomes, and hey, changing the world is about joy, love, connection, all these kind of things. So, that's the one part we haven't solved. So, if the people are connected to people out there that love this kind of mode of transformation that we're trying in community and want to support its building here and around the world, then I'd be really, really appreciative to meet and be connected to them.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here with us and for sharing all of these amazing stories.
Yeah, and thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for listening and taking some of your time to immerse yourself in this little world we're building.
Thank you for listening to our weekly podcast. Help us reach our goal of inspiring 100,000 people by sharing this podcast with your loved ones, with your Facebook friends. And if you loved this episode, please write a review on iTunes.